On a dark and stormy night, a group of adventurers decided to explore a dense forest shrouded in mystery. As they wandered among the towering trees, they soon realized they were lost, trapped in paths that all looked the same. No matter how hard they tried, they could not find a way out. Suddenly, in the midst of their despair, they spotted the silhouette of an ancient, majestic castle rising above the trees. Without hesitation, they made their way toward it, hoping to find shelter within its walls. Cautiously, they entered the castle and found themselves in a vast, dimly lit hall where the echoes of their footsteps filled the air. A strange chill surrounded them, and every corner of the place seemed to whisper forgotten tales of the past. As they explored the corridors, they stumbled into a hidden trap. But one among them, more alert than the rest, noticed a secret door concealed behind one of the walls. He opened it, and from within billowed thick black smoke. The group shuddered in fear as the eyes of a mysterious doll inside the chamber glowed a fiery red for a fleeting moment before dimming again. The air grew heavy with dread and unease. Inside the room, they discovered the strange doll. The chamber itself was vast, filled with ancient statues and abandoned treasures, its atmosphere thick with mystery under the pale light of the moon. Despite their fear, the adventurers decided to take the doll with them. When they returned to the city, they chose to sell it at a public auction. A large crowd gathered, curious about the eerie relic. In the end, a wealthy man purchased the doll for an extravagant price and placed it in his grand mansion, giving it a place of honor among his many priceless artifacts. He seemed to treat it with unusual care, which only deepened its mystery. One moonlit night, when the full moon cast its silver glow through the mansion's windows, the doll's eyes suddenly gleamed crimson once more. Black smoke seeped out of it, curling slowly through the corridors like a living shadow. The mist drifted into the child's bedroom, enveloping him in its sinister touch. From that moment on, his behavior began to change. The boy's body shivered violently as the smoke crept inside him, as though some unseen force had taken hold. By morning, when he opened his eyes, his pupils glowed red, and a chilling smile curved across his lips. Everyone in the mansion soon noticed the change. The boy no longer laughed, and when he spoke, it was only in whispers, as if another voice were speaking through him. He spent hours staring silently at the doll, sometimes smiling with that same unsettling grin that made others shiver. One night, the old servant who tended the mansion heard soft footsteps from the child's room. He cautiously pushed the door open and froze. The boy stood in the middle of the room while the doll floated in the air before him. Strange, otherworldly words slipped from his lips in a tongue no one could understand. The doll stirred, moving on its own. A low, eerie laugh filled the chamber, suffocating the air around them, and then it whispered to the child. The time is near. Far away, one of the adventurers who had first entered the forest was still plagued by nightmares of the castle and the doll. Each night, visions haunted him, of the boy's glowing red eyes and the doll whispering his name. When he awoke, he realized with horror that the nightmare was not over. What they had found in the castle was no mere doll, but the key to an ancient evil. Determined to right the past, he set out to gather his surviving companions. Their mission was clear: to find the doll before it was too late. Meanwhile, in a distant village, there lived an elderly woman known as Zara the Wise. She was famed for her knowledge of ancient energies and her deep understanding of cursed relics. When news reached her about the auction and the strange events that followed, she felt her powers tremble with unease. "This is no ordinary doll," she whispered to herself. "It is one of the 7 seals, and if its seal is broken, the world will never be the same." Carrying with her ancient scrolls and secrets buried for centuries, Zara set out for the city. She was determined to confront the dark force and aid the adventurers in their struggle. And thus, the threads of fate began to intertwine. The boy, now the vessel of a shadowed spirit, the adventurer, seeking redemption for his past, and Zara, who knew far more than she revealed, all of them moving toward an inevitable confrontation. But the question remained: Would they be able to stop the darkness before the black smoke spread and consumed everything?
Sunset, cloaked in a grey robe that concealed her features. She carried a small wooden box engraved with ancient symbols, one that no one dared to approach. Without delay, she made her way to an old friend, the keeper of a hidden library specializing in forgotten legends. "The evil has awakened," she said in a calm voice. "And the doll, it is merely a vessel for a spirit sealed away centuries ago, a spirit named Nizara." The librarian's eyes widened in horror. Nizara, wasn't her power buried deep within the forbidden forest? How did she escape? Zara pointed to the manuscript she had brought with her and whispered, "It was those adventurers. They opened the door by accident, and now the child is becoming her vessel." Meanwhile, the child sat on his bed in the palace, staring into the mirror, but his reflection was no longer his own. Instead, he saw another face, a woman with glowing red eyes, smiling at him with cruel delight. She spoke through the mirror, "You are my body now, little one, and with each full moon I will reclaim more of my power through you." The innocent child seemed dazed, as if under a trance. He had lost control over his own body and began speaking in languages no one could recognize. Each night, his room filled with black smoke, and strange disappearances occurred throughout the palace, as if something was taking objects into another realm. The next day, the adventurers gathered in the old city after receiving a secret summons from one of their own, a companion plagued by nightmares. They met in the abandoned tavern that had once served as their gathering place. One of them said, "What we thought was a mere adventure was actually a curse. We can't just walk away from this." At that moment, Zara the Wise entered the tavern slowly. She stopped in front of them and said, "You were the ones who opened the gate, but you're also the ones who must close it." She placed the box on the table. When she opened it, they saw the remains of another doll, broken but surrounded by protective symbols. She then revealed an old map, pointing to a hidden location beneath the palace where the cursed doll now resided. "There's a crypt beneath the palace," she said. "It has been sealed for centuries, and it holds Nizara's original seal. If we don't return the doll there before the next full moon, there will be no more moons to come." As they planned how to infiltrate the palace, the child's eyes were watching them through the mirrors, for he had now become Nizara's eyes in this world, and she whispered, "Let them come, they are far too late."
Inside the child's mind, everything was dark, no walls, no floor, just an endless gray void. The child stood alone, shouting, "I'm here, can anyone hear me?" But his voice didn't echo out. Instead, it returned to him, faint and hollow, as if the space itself swallowed it. Suddenly, black chains began to float around him in the air, writhing like serpents before they started to coil around his body. And from within the mist, she emerged. She was Nizara, moving slowly, dressed in a long black gown that touched the nothingness below. Her hair flowed like shadows, and her face was featureless, except for her eyes, glowing red like burning embers. As she approached him and spoke, her voice echoing deep within him, "This body is no longer yours, but we can share the pain if you don't resist." The child tried to scream, but he was paralyzed, trapped between his innocent memories and her dark voice. And every time he tried to remember, His mother, his toys, the sunlight, Nizara would whisper, "Forget. The more you forget, the more you become me." In a moment of weakness, a single tear formed in his eye, a tear that burned like fire. Back to the main story. That night, a storm raged at the edges of the city as the adventurers, guided by the wise Zara, prepared to head toward the castle. Each of them carried the weight of their past and a sacred exorcism tool that Zara had entrusted to them. She pulled her cloak tighter around her and said, "The child is still resisting, but not for long. If we reach the catacomb before the moon is full, we can save him and maybe save the world." The adventurers tightened their grip on their weapons and looked toward the horizon, where lightning revealed glimpses of the mysterious castle standing tall, as if watching them from the very beginning. And there, behind one of the high windows, the doll stood, her eyes igniting once more. Flashback 50 years ago, Zara was still young then, living in a small village surrounded by forests. She was known for her sharp intellect and her rare ability to read ancient symbols. Her father, Amin of the Shadows, was one of the guardians of the 7 seals, created to conceal the forces of evil from the world. One night, Zara entered her father's secret room, despite his many warnings. There, she found a small box etched with symbols she had never seen before. When she touched it, she heard a faint whisper for the first time in her life. A feminine voice said, "You will be the one to break the chain and the one to pay the price." That night marked the beginning of her eternal nightmare. One of the seals was broken, her father vanished under mysterious circumstances, and no trace of him was ever found. Since then, Zara devoted her life to understanding that dark power and to finding the spirit of Nizara, knowing she would return one day, and that day had come. Back to the castle, the storm reached its peak as the adventurers, led by Zara, entered the castle. The giant wooden doors opened slowly, as if resisting their entry. The air inside was heavy, thick with the scent of decay and ancient magic. One of the adventurers whispered, "It's like we're stepping back into the same hall where we lost our path years ago." Zara, gripping a strangely shaped pendant, replied, "The path to the catacomb is riddled with illusions. Do not trust your eyes and never trust the shadows." As they moved through the corridors, the doll began to appear in various corners, sometimes smiling, sometimes silently watching. Then they heard a soft laugh coming from above. They looked up, and there was the child standing on the balcony. His eyes glowed red, and his voice, 2 voices in one, echoed down, "Welcome to the end. You're too late." Inside the castle, the betrayal as the group continued down the cold, narrow corridors, Zara led them to a tight stone passage that opened onto a massive door etched with ancient magical symbols. Behind it lay the catacomb, the place where Nizara's spirit could be sealed once again. But just as Zara reached out to touch the door and begin the ritual, a familiar voice called out behind them. "Enough," said one of the adventurers in a low voice, drawing his weapon. "I won't let you close the gate." They all turned in shock. Karim, one of their longtime companions, stood there, his face calm, unwavering, and his eyes glinting with a strange light. Zara's voice trembled. "Nizara, She's reached you too. Karim smiled, but it wasn't a human smile. I was never as naive as you. I saw the power she offers. This isn't a curse, it's a rebirth. One of the group tried to approach him, but Karim raised his hand and released a burst of black energy that sent the man crashing to the ground. The group instinctively pulled back. But Zara had anticipated a possible betrayal. From her satchel, she pulled out a glowing crystal and shouted, "Karim, if you've chosen the darkness, then there's no place for you among us." She raised the crystal to his eyes, releasing a beam of pure white light. Karim screamed, his eyes cracking from the brightness. In seconds, his dark energy evaporated into black smoke and his body collapsed, empty, soulless. Everyone stood in stunned silence. Then Zara said softly, "The closer we get to the heart of the castle, the stronger Nizara's influence becomes. He won't be the last." In the catacomb, the moment of liberation at last, they reached the catacomb. It was a vast chamber carved into stone, with a ritual circle in the center. Within it stood an ancient, broken statue, the original seal that once held Nizara's soul. Floating above the circle was the child, suspended by unseen forces, his eyes ablaze with red fire. The doll hovered near him, laughing with a twisted, demonic chuckle. Zara stepped forward, her voice firm. "It's time." She began drawing symbols onto the ground, instructing the others to guard the circle until the ritual was complete. As she chanted in forgotten tongues, Nizara made her move. The doll began to twitch violently, letting out a shriek that defied reality. The ceiling cracked, and chunks of stone began to fall, but the adventurers stood their ground. They raised the sacred sword, channeling their energy toward the doll. Then the child opened his mouth, and Nizara's voice, furious and unearthly, echoed from within, "You won't cast me out so easily. This body is mine." Zara didn't stop. She pushed through the ritual, her voice rising with power. And in a flash, tongues of radiant white light erupted from the ground, engulfing the child and the doll together. Nizara let out a scream so loud it seemed to tear the very air apart, before she was pulled violently toward the broken statue. Suddenly, the child fell to the ground. Silent, Zara approached cautiously, kneeling beside him and placing a hand gently on his forehead. "He's all right," he resisted to the end. "His soul is unbroken." The group looked at one another in quiet disbelief. They hadn't just survived a curse, they had confronted darkness itself, and won. Epilogue: the silence before the storm, the adventurers left the catacomb in silence, carrying the child in their arms as the castle's ruins crumbled around them. The night was nearly over. The moon faded behind thick clouds, as if it, too, had grown weary of what it had witnessed. Outside the castle, Zara paused for a moment, staring at the fractured structure that had imprisoned evil for centuries. One of the adventurers asked, "Is it over?" She closed the ritual box and answered quietly, "Evil is never defeated, only delayed." She looked down at the sleeping child and added, "He'll need time to forget if he forgets." As the team walked away from the castle, none of them noticed what stirred deep within the catacomb. Within the cracks of the broken statue, a tiny eye flickered red for just a moment and then vanished.